Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Control Committee, 3rd of April 2025. Just gone 6 o'clock. We just had a bit of a technical problem with our new system that we've got in place. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to the public gallery. Item 1, apologies. I can't see Councillor Nawaz, is he? Yeah. Apologies from Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Bonser. Item 2, late items. I'll bring one first and then I've got Ian to chip in as well. Due to a few bits and bobs, and we've got quite a few residents for the Pingle Hill Way application, we're going to bring that one forward. So 7.2 will be first, and then we'll go to 7.1 and 7.3 when we get to the. We've spoken to all the speakers, and they're fully online with that one as well. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. From this meeting onwards, we are supplying, you'll have noted, the full details of representations from third parties for your consumption. So James has worked hard on getting them all together because we get comments, online comments from our e-planning service, emails, letters, and so just bringing them all together so you can see them all, and we'll be doing that as we move forward, just so you've got all the information that you need, and hopefully you're able to digest all those comments. So, Councillor Graves has got his hand up, Chair.
Councillor Graves.
Thank you for that information. We did notice that. I'm interested to know why you changed your mind after so long.
Well, in terms of the publication of them, we took on board what you'd said about them. We'd summarised them in reports. In terms of the way that we handle representations on our e-planning service, we still don't include them. But for your perusal, as the committee members, we felt that you'd made strong points about it, and they were valid points, and so that's the way we're going to do it from now on.
Councillor Prosser has been talking about this for at least a year, and I don't understand. And yet you have an item in the local press, and then suddenly your minds get changed. I just wondered why local members, committee members of the planning committee don't influence you, but the local press, an article in local press which actually shows how undemocratic it was, gets you to change your mind.
That was entirely coincidental, Councillor Graves. We'd been talking about it for some time. It's just, we had an issue with information governance on how we handled representations and displayed them on our website, and so we took the decision some time ago. Other authorities do it the same way. Some authorities don't, to remove representations from the web pages, and we felt that the way that we were producing representations in reports, we were trying to capture the flavour of all comments that people made, and didn't feel that we were withholding information from you. But clearly, points have been made in the recent past, and we've looked at it, and we've looked at how we can get the information together and provide it to you, and we just hope that moving forward, that's the most sensible and agreeable solution. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Graves. Item 3, declarations of interest. There are none. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on 13th February 2025. Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Item 5, minutes of the meeting of the Conservation and Heritage Advisory Committee held on 9th of January 2025. Thank you very much, noted. Item 6, appeal decisions. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple to report. First one, essentially extensions to the old Carnegie Library. An application we had to extend the building and provide 9 flats. It was in outline form with all matters reserved, and we weren't happy with what they'd shown in a notional format. Whilst it was all in outline, they'd shown the form of development that would likely come forward as part of reserved matters, and so we'd got concerns about it. And it's a very useful inspector's report, actually. It spans some 30+ paragraphs, and it covers the issues about the impact on the character of the locally listed building. issues pertaining to trees on the site and living conditions of future occupants. And it's a very well written piece, and the inspector agreed with our position, so that was dismissed. That was a useful one, Chair. And the second one, another form of development we weren't particularly happy with, a new block with 6 apartments in, and we've got issues relating to the impact on neighbours at the rear. And so we'd refused permission for that full application, and they took it to appeal, and the inspector agreed again with the issues of massing overbearing impact of the development and the form of the development relative to the neighbouring properties, and also some street trees as well in that location. So two appeal decisions, Chair, and 2 inspectors' letters worthy of perusal if you've not done so already. So I'll take any questions, of course, Chair. Thank you.
Any questions on those appeals?
Oh, just one other thing, Chair. One other thing. Yeah, sorry, forgot to mention, also I thought I'd update you as I did before about the Royal Hill Road appeal. We had another conference with the barrister on Monday involving Councillor Holmes. That kicks off on the 15th of April in this chamber. So we've had the conference with the barrister, and we've got an issue of, we've got confirmation of timings as to when, how long he intends to examine and cross-examine people, and their barrister has done the same. So notes for the diary. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. Item 7, applications to be considered. As I say, we're starting with 7.2, 4 Pingle Hill Way in Chellaston. Over to Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, could I direct members to page 13, section 1.1. The address should read 4 Pingle Hill Way, not number 19. Full permission is sought for the change of use of the existing dwelling into a care home for children of up to 3 children between the ages of 8 and 18 years. There will be no modifications to the internal layout or the externalities of the property. Therefore, the dwelling and its curtilage would retain the look and character of neighbouring houses within the estate setting. The site is a modern 4-bed detached dwelling with frontage driveway provision for up to 3 vehicles and an integral garage. To the rear, as you can see from the site plan there, it's a reasonably sized private garden area fenced on all sides. The area comprises a residential estate with similar sized detached dwellings within a suburban setting. The submitted supporting information indicates 2 care workers will be required at the home at any given time during the day, including overnight, ensuring wraparound care at all times. The proposed children's home would need to be registered with the Healthcare Inspectorate and comply with all the necessary legislation that ensures it's run to an appropriate standard. The applicant has submitted further supporting information by way of a site management plan, which includes parking matters, protocols for dealing with disturbances and community engagement. The supporting information states staff will work on a shift patterns typically between 7:30 a.m. and 10:30 p.m. and visitor parking arrangements would be on an appointment basis. The 2 key planning issues relating to residential amenity implications and highway parking impacts. It's not within the remit of the planning system to seek to control the day-to-day functioning or management of the home, nor can we control the suitability of its occupiers. The proposal is a form of residential use within an existing residential dwelling in a residential location. A total of 60 letters of objection and 27 letters of support have been received. These are listed on pages 14 to 16 within your report. The main issues of objection include traffic, parking, noise, change of character, impact on community. In terms of highways, Pingle Hill Way is a cul-de-sac with the application property at the T-junction with unrestricted on-street parking. 2 to 3 vehicles could be accommodated upon the property driveway. In terms of visitor frequency and staff shift patterns, the number of visitors or vehicles present on or around the site at any time is difficult to state with total certainty, as this is tied into the operational functioning of the home and the individual requirements of the occupants. Yet supporting information states staff will work on shift patterns typically between 7:30 a.m. and 10:30 p.m. and visitor parking arrangements on an appointment basis. There is potential for ad hoc parking around the application property, which may on occasion cause localised parking disruption. However, this is unlikely to constitute a significant harm to the local highway network. Turning to residential amenity implications, it's difficult to argue the formation of a children's care home in this location would result in substantive harm to the local amenity of the area. The intensification of use and associated activity, including the comings and goings of children, health professionals or visitors, would be unlikely to cause significant material harm or disturbance that could be expected by regular C3 use of this large family 4-bed home. The applicant has submitted a statement relating to the management of the premises and their strategies for dealing with its operational use. With the management strategy conditioned and adhered to, there would be measures to address any operational issues, and if granted permission, the integration of the care home provider and local community would be important in this case, and the submitted site management plan is the means to which this could be achieved. As per the report, a recommendation is given to grant permission with conditions. Chair, the highway officer is present to field any related questions, and there are 4 speakers to address committee.
Thanks, Aaron. We'll start with Mr. Sierra. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Every child deserves a loving home. Those are not my words, they're not words of even the applicant. They're actually the words of Derby City Council and its care partners who look after children. A loving home. The applicant and his colleagues are local people with care experience, up to 15 years experience between them. In fact, one of the applicants actually been through the care system, and hopefully you might agree that he's turned out all right. He owns his own home, he works in the locality. After spending many years in the Northwest in care homes of an institutional kind, he feels that he'd like to give back to the community by providing a home which is within a community setting. The applicants held a community meeting. They tried to engage the community and got some interesting feedback, positive and negative, as 60 and 27 representations have been made. The main one that came out was traffic and highways impact. And again, the planning officers indicated that the highways have not raised any objections there and deemed that it is no different a use to a residential home of 5, 6, 7 people, which most large families would occupy in a 4-bedroom house. One thing which does jump out is the fact that the local community is active. There's an old proverb which goes that to bring a child into the world, it takes 2 people, but to raise a child, it takes a whole community. And I feel that the passion of the community in voicing their opinion will also help with the same gusto to bring the children who come through these homes to be upright citizens. In fact, I'm pretty sure in this chamber today, there's at least one person who has been through the care system. And if you're a counsellor, well, you've turned out all right, you've succeeded in life. Others might not agree, but I think to be in the chamber, you've done well in life if you come through the care system. So it's about supporting the Derby City Council, your councillors' obligation to look after children. That's what this applicant does, is to provide a service that will supplement and complement the City Council children's services. Like I said, it's no different to another home. I would like to thank the planning officer for helping us work through this and to overcome some of the objections. And in fact, the whole planning team, who did suggest that there are 2 options. There's a certificate of lawful development, which is the easy route, which we could have gone down, or the more full planning application route, which is the more difficult route, which is the chosen route, and the advised route of the planning team to go down this route so that all the issues can be brought out and dealt with before starting the business rather than afterwards. Thank you for listening, and I hope you're minded to take the officer's recommendations and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sierra. We now have Trevor Cliff. You have 3 minutes, sir.
thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Two residents within Pingle Hill Way had a letter which was physically pushed through the door of each house with an invitation to attend the meeting that the gentleman has just mentioned. The meeting primarily was to address any concerns that we as residents of Pingle Hill Way may want to have discussed. And obviously this was all regarding the recent planning application submitted for number 4 Pingle Hill Way. The letter stated 4 points, bullet points, and during the meeting, the replies to some of our questions relating to these bullet points. Number 1, safety and security. One of the directors openly had admitted that they have in the past had incidents with children with behavioural problems. One of which was involving a tin of baked beans, as trivial as that may sound, emptied onto a neighbour's driveway. It was dealt with, and how, we're not quite sure, but that was the answer given. Another of the comments made by the director was, the children may kick off and display disruptive behaviour at any time of day or night, which most of the residents of Pingle Hill Way found quite worrying. Community integration, number 2. We were told we may be subject to noise, and if a child was to kick off, and those were his words, we would still hear the noise even through the windows, the brickwork and the fabrication of the house, and that on-site staff would endeavour to manage this. Impact on the local area. We stated that there isn't enough room for 3 cars on the driveway. It is physically impossible to get 3 cars on the drive. And what happens on staff changeovers? They could not quantify how many cars there would be at any given time for staff changeover, visits by authorities or families. They stated that if they couldn't get on the drive, there is parking at the side of the property. Yes, there is, but this would endanger the residents because it would mean that they would be parking on the corner of Pingle Hill Way where drivers are unable to see, adding to residents' frustration and safety. This is an accident waiting to happen. Later that evening, there was one of the directors was seen walking around Pingle Hill Way, knocking on doors, asking people of their opinions, and if they were at the meeting, taking photographs. He was reported to the police. The police spoke to him and told him that his behaviour was not acceptable and ill-advised. This is a strange and worrying way of nurturing relationships of trust with the local community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'd just like to bring the following statements to the panel's attention with regard to the application. It's been declared on the application that only 3 vehicles will be present at the occupancy, yet the occurrence of transient visitation to and from the business will exceed that of a normal family residence. This was confirmed that additional support and professionals is required by the 2 directors of the business at the meeting held with the residents. This is currently declared as Zoom calls on the application. Certain professionals, supporting professionals, can only conduct welfare checks to the children face-to-face to make sure that they are not being coerced. The business wants all the benefits of a neighbourhood without caring about the effects to the residents or contributing towards it. This was demonstrated at the meeting with the residents when they declared they did not care about the residents' concerns and will proceed regardless. The transient nature of the visitors won't care about the effects of the bad parking because it's not bothered to them. They will just turn up and leave it wherever they want. This kind of parking was demonstrated by the director that visited the cul-de-sac later that evening following the residents' meeting. He did exactly the same. There is clearly ill feeling within the residents regarding the manner in which this application has been conducted. This does not create a warm, welcoming atmosphere for anybody coming to reside in this property. This is due to the failure of the residents' meeting, comments made by the directors during the residents' meeting, as well as the behaviours of one of the directors following it. As declared by Councillor Ingalls in a moment, the parking situation should not be taken lightly. An on-site visit should be encouraged to see how this narrow cul-de-sac is. Previous residents have already felt the effects of part-time businesses being conducted in this cul-de-sac and the chaos that has been created. This new business would increase this 24/7, 52 weeks a year without respite for the residents. Not 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It's based on the children's needs, which are unknown. No clear route of escalation into the business has been given to carers, directors, owners. All of them are transient. Where a residential family, it's very clear who you go to. Parent, neighbour. It's very simple. The only clear beneficiary on this application is the business and its owners. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ingle, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to speak. This house clearly has a checkered history. At one time, it was used for growing cannabis. Some weeks ago, the directors of this company asked us as local residents to a meeting to try and allay any fears local residents have. They tried to reassure residents that staff working here would park away from the property and park appropriately. The meeting had some bad feeling about it. The meeting finished about 7:30. However, at gone 9:30 that night, one of the directors was door-knocking local residents and intimidating them so much that there were numerous calls to the police, and the director in question was spoken to by the police about his behaviour. I thought it was particularly interesting, as at the meeting earlier, they had said the staff would park appropriately, yet then on the night in question, even though the drive was empty, he chose to park right on the T-junction, halfway on the pavement, half on the road. Chair, this change is not appropriate at this location, as the road is so narrow. We have several others of these homes in the ward, and you wouldn't know they were there. The difference is the other homes have good off-road parking available. Here, they will cause massive problems. Chair, if I may make a suggestion, can I call for a site visit so the members of this committee can come and see this road for themselves? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ingle. We shall go now to the committee. Any comments? Sorry, Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've obviously listened very carefully to the speakers this evening, and I've read the report that we've all had circulated. Members of the committee will know we have had previous situations like this before us, but we always take each individual application on its merits, and particularly, obviously, bear in mind the location. I don't think Pingle Hill Way, Chellaston, is any different to any other situation we've dealt with, however. If we can think back to the most recent application we've had regarding a similar application, I can understand the residents' fears because it's the not known of what and who will be housed in this dwelling house if it gets planning permission. As the first speaker said, we are all corporate parents and we take that position very carefully and diligently as councillors. The issue I have with this location is there are no objections from the Highway Authority, as we saw from the plan, and I do know the site, even though it has been called that we go to a site meeting. I don't think that is necessary, in my view. Most of the representations on page 14 and 15 aren't anything to do with planning detail. They are more the management plan, as we've had historically, previously. So I think that is the crux there. The management plan is the most important document of this detail, and I think perhaps it should be strengthened in that there needs to be a dialogue with local residents, and whilst it's only hearsay that we've listened to speakers this evening, I hope that can be improved if what and I have no reason to doubt that the speakers haven't given their point of view, but obviously the applicant isn't there to defend him or herself. But what I've found in my time is that it is useful to have a dialogue with the local residents and put their minds at rest as far as possible. It's a shame that the fears of residents in way that antisocial behaviour and other issues, this is a family home. You could have any family moving there, and as we all know from our casework and our general life, you know, issues do arise in the community that aren't planned. So, you know, that's part of life, I'm afraid. What I think we can do, realistically, is what we've done before, is that put a 12 months temporary application on it, as we've done previously. So, therefore, the home has got time to settle down. It's given 12 months. And if there are any issues, then clearly they would work with the local councillors in this case, and obviously it will have to come back to committee. I see from the notes that I've highlighted on, forgive me, page 21 and 23 that they have not yet been Ofsted registered. Well, clearly that has to go down a formal route, and those issues that are stipulated within Ofsted are quite stringent and will be looked upon in a very sensible manner. So I agree that this application should go ahead, but I'd like to amend it to the 12-month permission so that it comes back to committee if there are any issues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bottom. Councillor Bonser.
Yes, I'd just like to second and support that position. Actually, it's something that when I read through it this afternoon, I couldn't see that there was a valid planning reason to refuse it, but I really do understand the concerns of residents when a change of use like this comes into effect, and having that safety net, if you like, for the residents so that they've got somewhere to go if things aren't run the way that we would hope and expect them to be, then I think that would be a positive further condition and amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonser. Anybody else? Councillor Prosser first, then Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. A lot of the objections here I have utter sympathy with. For instance, the road is very narrow. We know that. There is no reasonable place on that street to park. Shift change measures will be very difficult. The contract in the documents, which means you can't run a business from the property, which is a legal matter, but from a planning perspective makes our life very difficult. We understand it. We understand the objections. Unfortunately, it's not grounds that we can necessarily found on. The big one, though, and I have to thank you for sharing the objections with us. The big one for me that raises massive red flags is in the objections. It appears that the current owner of the property did use that property as a drugs grow. And now we're being asked for this to be converted into a children's home. And that raises massive red flags for me. Again, planning-wise, that's very difficult. But also, is that even something we should be considering?
Councillor Kerr.
That's an interesting prospect about why we should want to have a legitimate use of a building rather than a illegal use of a building. I would prefer to have a legal use of the building, and the planning committee is obviously part of that process. The transport is clearly an issue wherever you have a care home or shift changes, and it doesn't actually need to be it doesn't have to be a care home where you get shift changes. It can also be a household where there is somebody who has significant care needs, often somebody who's elderly, you need somebody in attendance. So I don't think an issue about shift change problems and car parking is something that we can take more notice of than the highways assessment has given us, and that says it's manageable. As it would be manageable if this was a household with 2 cars and 2 adult children with cars as well. It would have to be managed. The community would learn to manage it. There would be potentially people who work out where is the best point to park. As a community working together, and as has been stated, this is a community, and it is one that I think has the potential to grow and adapt. One of the advantages of having a controlled building, as this will be in part, is that when things get out of hand, it isn't just a management plan that we will require, but there is also the Ofsted oversight, and there are routes to be able to manage situations in a more structured way than just a fairly chaotic household, and there are chaotic households in all parts of the city. My particular point is that I would really hope that part of the management can look at the transport and a travel plan. Now, there is a bus route through here. It could be that some or all of the staff could be coming by bus. Some of them might live not too far away and be able to cycle or walk. There is a condition at the moment about cycle parking. It doesn't include mention of incidental cycle parking, which might be applicable to a therapist or somebody else, maybe some home school or tutor turning up. And I think to make sure that we have both long-term secure cycle parking and some safe incidental parking needs to be considered as part of that condition. I would support also the idea of an initial 12 months, and I think that helps concentrate the management's mind as to how to fit in and manage the situation as effectively as possible, to give, as was stated, a good loving home to a child or children in this case.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Orson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd also like to support Councillor Bolton's suggestion in terms of that amendment. Looking at the comments that we've received from residents and members of the public, whose concerns are understandable, and as members of the committee and ward representatives, we do understand that. There's always a fear of the unknown and potential what may happen. But as members of the planning committee, we have to look at the planning law and make our decision based on this individual application in the light of that. So the comments were sort of grouped around highways issues, and without an objection from the Highways Authority, I think it was difficult to not to support it on those grounds. You'd expect the 2 or 3 spaces on site to be able to accommodate the staff who are working at any one time, and if you were to expect probably a maximum of 2 other professionals visiting at any one time, it does look to be adequate on-street accommodation for those vehicles. As we've said, in terms of amenity, which the committee has looked at very carefully, and which has been a grounds for refusal in one other case that I can certainly remember. In that particular case, the home was already up and running, so there was actually evidence there to provide the committee to make a judgment about amenity. And in this case, as the home is not yet open, we're not able to do that. So that's where I do think the temporary permission of 12 months is the best that we can do as a committee in support of the residents, so that we can get the management plan in place, which, as it's been said, that's the key document, and that needs to be very carefully monitored. And then there can be a review in 12 months, and if there are problems, then it'll be possible to present that to the committee and make those arguments in terms of residential amenity, and the committee would then potentially be in a different position. So yes, I'd support those that additional condition that's been suggested, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Orson. Any other questions? You can't. You've had your 3 minutes, so I'm sorry. I think the best way forward for all parties, I would go along with what Councillor Bolton has suggested, to have the temporary 12 months, and then it can come back. Matt, do you want to come in on something?
Well, I mean, I'd like to put forward and propose the suggestion of a site visit and formally just ask the committee whether they'd support that. I think that's only fair considering it's been raised with us. I'll propose that.
And any in favour of a site visit?
Sorry, Chair, you need to second it.
Oh, you have a second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Councillor Patterson and Councillor Graves has thirded it. So any takers for the site visit to study the potential of the traffic? No, I'll stick my hand on that one as well.
5.
Yeah.
5, Chair.
6.
6.
6. Any against?
3 against, Chair.
So that's carried. That's
carried.
carried. So we will defer this one for a site visit for future look at, and I think we'll consider this as well. If the site visit comes off, that we bring it back to committee again. I still think we can keep Councillor Bolton's suggestion about the 12-month temporary licence or whatever. So if we can keep that.
Yeah.
So,
Chair, just
yeah.
on
sorry,
that,
Stephen.
Sorry, Chair. Just on that point, I think the proposal for a temporary permission is consistent with the government advice. Just to read it for you, it says circumstances where temporary permission may be appropriate include where a trial run is needed in order to assess the effect of the development on the area. So I think it would be consistent with that advice. The other point, actually, just Chair to also raise, just in terms of, I think what Councillor Prosser was saying as regards the owners of the site and reputation or past circumstances. When you're dealing with applications, we're looking simply at land use and whether it's an acceptable land use. We're not looking at, it's not really relevant as regards the reputation or past history of the owner of the site. It's looking at whether it's an acceptable land use. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that thanks for that explanation, Stephen. Sorry, explanation. So, do we vote on the deferral? Yes.
No, you voted on.
So we voted on the deferral. Yes. So we defer that for a site visit, and then we'll reconsider this application in the future. So thank you very much, everybody that's turned up tonight. Thank you for all the speakers, and thank you, Councillor Ingle. Thank you very much. We shall move on to excuse me, my throat. We'll move on to item 7.1, Thornhill Lodge Guest House, and this one is Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This has been before you before, Chair, of course, and it was deferred, and we've gone back to the agent where various amendments have been made. In March, confirmation of reduced occupancy was confirmed, so we've now got 16 potential occupants in the buildings. It's single occupancy in the rooms. It was previously a 12-bed bed and breakfast, and they've also sought to regularise and show parking in the rear garden and spaces for cycle parking and bin storage, and so those amendments have also been made. In addition to those amendments, you've also been circulated a late item from Councillor Alison Martin, who's concerned about the impact of this house in multiple occupancy on the neighbouring care home, which is for dementia patients, and she's made comments about that. In terms of the report, Chair, I think it comprehensively covers off all the issues and deals with all matters, including the public sector equality duty, which is in the latter stages of the report, and based on what we've got now, Chair, what you'd seen before, I think it's a reasonable reduction, and I think it sort of fits what you were looking for. And I'd invite the speakers, Chair. You have 3 in total, including Councillor Heselgrave. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. We'll start with Belinda Hadfield. You have 3 minutes.
I'm speaking for Thornhill Road residents and our nearby community about the amended proposal for a 16-bed-sit HMO. 16 tenants plus visitors in one property still threatens our street's harmony, infrastructure and vulnerable neighbours. We ask you to protect our well-being and reject this outright. Cutting the number from 25 to 16 doesn't fix the fundamental issues. It's a tactic, not a solution. Cramming in 16 bed-sits does not fix the need for family housing and long-term stability. It offers quantity over quality, profit over people. Our street is family-oriented, averaging 1 to 4 tenants per home. This HMO would endanger our community's character. 16 transient tenants would shatter that harmony with noise, foot traffic and potential antisocial behaviour. There are vulnerable neighbours, all of whom are protected characteristics. Holly Tree Lodge, a dementia care home, who fear the noise and disruption for its residents. Parents at Thornhill Day Nursery fear for their children's safety with extra traffic, noise and possible overlooking of the play area. The building has not been used as a B&B since before COVID, and then it was short stays with permanent on-site staff. Comparisons of this application to current use are not correct. This HMO would overwhelm our infrastructure, waste, water, sewage and parking already stretched. Recent developments across Abbey have added hundreds of residents without new doctors, dentists or shops. Our street can't cope with 16 more people and guests in one house. Reducing the occupant cap does not mitigate the strain this development would impose, nor does it clarify who would enforce the limit if approved. Parking is already problematic. 5 on-site spaces would be insufficient for 16 residents and guests. Evening and weekend parking could block ambulances to Holly Tree Lodge. Cycle racks and bus stops don't fix car parking space wars. The proposal breaches the 1888 covenants on the site, mandating the property should be used solely as a private dwelling house, a term historically understood to mean a single-family residence, not a multi-occupancy dwelling like a HMO. I urge you all to consider this covenant breach seriously to uphold the area's historical and residential character. Antisocial behaviour and crime is a great concern which should not be ignored by stating there is no link to tenure. When at the meeting in October, the police superintendent, head of operations, stated HMOs have a detrimental effect upon community cohesion in a number of ways, including raised levels of crime and antisocial behaviour. Please don't dismiss these comments. The application also risks setting a precedent. Derby's proposed new Article 4 directive aims to stop HMO sprawl, yet approving this would signal the opposite.
Ms Hadfield.
One last bit.
Sorry.
We are the experts by experience. No residents support it. It threatens a fractured community. Please reject this outright. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much. No problem. Read quicker next time.
I will have to, yes.
But thank you very much for that. Mr Calvier-Mann, your 3 minutes, sir.
I'm the owner of the care home next door, which I've had for 17 years. As mentioned, we are specifically for people with dementia, which is a very unique category, unlike other homes in Derby. Most of our residents are mobile, however, they are generally on the side of the building, which is where the B&B currently is. The new side windows proposed would allow views into our conservatory, where they will see people being hoisted, which is not something that we would normally do in public for matters of dignity. We've tried curtains and blinds, but the residents will tear those down. I would agree with all the previous objections for the same reasons, however, they will have more of an impact on us, especially on residents who do have protected characteristics. We have 25 residents, 30 staff working shifts, we have families visiting, doctors and nurses, and most importantly, we have ambulances coming sometimes on a fairly regular basis. There have been issues in the past where our drives have been blocked, ambulances have to park down the road or double park, and any of that will be detrimental to our home. And as for noise, if any of you have any experience with anybody who has dementia, you'll know that noise can set people off, and it starts a chain reaction. One person screaming starts everybody else screaming, and the whole house, it can go wild, basically. So where you say in your guidance that noise and disturbance may not be considered as unacceptable harm to us and our residents, it very much can be. The documents also talk about historic use. As Belinda said, I've never seen anybody in that B&B. It's very quiet, and so it is not a comparable level of occupation. And the noise and the disturbance will be a lot more. We've never had any problems with the B&B. Part of the guidance, as mentioned earlier by somebody up there, was about public sector equality duty. This is not part of that. This will go against that. The guidance also talks about adverse impacts. If you want to see the adverse impacts, come to our care home one day, make some noise and see what happens. You will see exactly what putting a development like this next to a care home for dementia will do to us. Hopefully, Adult Social Care has already made representations to you. We are considered one of your better care homes in the City of Derby. I would hope that you would listen to what they have told you already about us. I'm not against housing in principle. It's something that this country needs, and I'm quite happy with it. But 16 people next to a care home for people with dementia is, quite frankly, it's ridiculous. We have 25 people who will suffer if you guys give this planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Hazelgrave, you have 3 minutes.
Chair, councillors, just let's look at what life would be like for anyone who actually takes up residence in Thornhill Lodge Guest House as an HMO. There will be 5 parking spaces for 16 residents. There's a communal kitchen. Will rooms be provided with a fridge? And if not, how will residents cope with perishable food items they wish to cook or consume fresh? How many fridges in the kitchen will be available to accommodate this? We all generally eat 3 meals a day at fairly common times. Will there be sufficient provision of hobs, ovens, microwaves, sinks and equipment for residents to prepare food and consume it when they want? Or will this lead to disputes and bad blood, leading to poor relations and friction? Are you reassured that the offer for tenants is appropriate and reasonable in the opinion of the average citizen of Derby? Is it the best use of this building? Current residents on the street experience parking problems, blocked drives, for example, as a result of parents dropping off and collecting their little ones from the nursery, so overspill parking from the currently named guest house will compound this. As has been mentioned, my fellow Cabinet member with a portfolio for adult social care is concerned about the impact on the residents of the care home, which exclusively caters for people with dementia. I won't rehearse the arguments that have just been advanced, and so will curtail what I was going to say on that. Arrangements for bin collections may be promised, but evidence of landlords' observations of this can be seen down Utoxeter New Road at particular times, where bins are regularly overflowing with excess rubbish deposited beside them as they weren't made available for collection by landlords as stipulated or were overfilled when presented. Let's imagine that all the new residents are the perfect neighbour. They are considerate at all times of their fellow residents on the street and nearby. Despite this, they will have invidious choices to make about where they park and also what advice their visitors are given about parking arrangements and where visitors should park with consideration of residents in the vicinity. I would ask the committee to consider how likely it will be that residents are less than perfect neighbours. How will this be regulated and dealt with? Otherwise, it will clearly have an adverse and chronic effect on the lives of other residents on the street. I ask you to reject this application as it currently stands.
Thank you very much. Committee, any questions, observations? Councillor Kerr, then Councillor Bolt.
I think we have to remember that we haven't got control over this building. We only have some control over the use of the building. One of the suggestions that some of the objectors have put forward was to use the 3 floors of the building as 3 flats. And each flat might have a family in it with 5 people, 6 people, and you end up with a similar number of people in the building as you have with the proposal that we have in front of us. But we can't propose that because we don't own the building. We can only look at what is being presented to us. The advice that we've got from our highways team is that for this sort of accommodation, it is unusual for more than 1 in 3 residents to have their own vehicle. And the parking that is being proposed would accommodate that level. The owner of the building will have to make it clear that there is no on-street parking during the week because it's a residents-only parking area, and anybody who does park on the road will be fined if other residents spot them and ask for the parking enforcement team to come, or the parking enforcement team is doing their regular visits. I am concerned about the 1 parking space that seems to be parking in the bins. And I don't know quite how we manage that. I would like to have a comment back from Highways or somebody about how that is really going to be managed. There isn't any obvious incidental parking, so somebody who is coming to visit their mate on a weekend day isn't going to cycle unless they actually know that there is cycle parking available when they've been before. So I think this is another example where if there is clear ability to park your casual bicycle securely, people will be more likely to use that as a means of transport. There is a good bus service not far away, the Micklover service, as long as you want to go to town and back. If you want to come from anywhere else, or Micklover and back, then there isn't much choice. So for some people it will be suitable, for many others it may not be. If you're travelling, if you're looking for accommodation, then you tend to look for something where transport to your job or to visit your friends is readily available. And I would hope that people who are looking for accommodation would be able to do this. I can't therefore see significant reasons, planning reasons, why we should be turning this down, particularly as we have heard, well, you read in the report, what we call the tilted balance, in that Derby hasn't got enough housing opportunities at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was concerned about this when it came to committee, was it the end of last year? So I was pleased we've deferred it. My concern at the moment is with the letter from Councillor Alison Martin, and we've heard from one of the speakers regarding the aspect on the dementia home next door. My dad have experienced dementia, so I do know the effects of noise and any disturbance really that can have implications on their behaviour. But my point to the legal advisor is, are there implications on health? Has that been used before to stop a home going ahead as this? I'm unsure. I mean, I'm sympathetic, having had first-hand experience of dementia, but my point is, will that stand up if we refuse this application? Before I say anything else, I'd just like some guidance on that, please.
All right, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sarah. In terms of public sector equality duty, it's a duty that you have to have regard to, and it may well impact on your decision. Well, it may well impact on your decision. As I say, it's a duty you've got to have regard to. It doesn't necessarily mean that if there are impacts on people with protected characteristics, that it prevents you from granting permission. But it's something that you clearly have to have regard to when you're considering the matter. Where people with protected characteristics are affected, then the weight is purely for the decision maker to attach, whether how much weight they are. But I think crucially, I think you need when you're considering it, to be aware of what the potential impacts are to those individuals that are protected. And if you haven't got that information, it's difficult to make that assessment. I think that would be one point. So I think effectively you need to understand what the consequences are to those people, take that into account, then weigh that in the balance, and that may or may not sort of come to determination of whether you grant or not. But if you have taken it into account and you decide to grant, well, you're acting properly. If you have taken it into account and decide that has such a weight to refuse it, you can justify it on that basis. I hope that's a relatively quick explanation of.
Good with me. Do you want to come back, Sarah?
Thank you, Stephen, for that analysis. In my view, I have been to site a few times. I live not far from it, and I visited last time and I visited again. There's a mix of the nursery, obviously the care home, which we've had the speaker, and it was a busy street when I visited in a residential area. I still think 16 bedrooms is over-intensification. If you think there could possibly be 16 cars, or even you could even double that if there are a couple. And the report does state, apart from the parking on site, there is no other parking on street because it's controlled. I'm not happy with this situation at all. And taking into account the protected characteristics of the property next door, I'm inclined not to support this application.
Ian, do you want to come back on that one, sorry?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a few points to cover off. Belinda Hadfield mentioned about various things in terms of local services being overwhelmed. This proposal doesn't give any rise for any kind of Section 106 obligation. The 1888 covenant is a civil issue to be considered, but not a planning matter. Where we talk about including cycle parking and accessibility to bus stops, that's to obviously maximise sustainable and active travel. In terms of the concentration of HMOs in the area, that's provided in the report in pictorial fashion, and we show that there's not a concentration, so we don't feel we could justify any refusal on those grounds, Chair. We've also got the issue of the parking bay, and that's covered off in the report. The parking space at the front, it says on page 8 and then follows down onto page 9. The omission of the parking space to the immediate side of the house in favour of bin storage access, as per the Council's Waste and Recycling Officer's request, are also recommended. Final details of parking layout, bin storage and cycle parking are recommended as a condition. So we'll tidy that up as well, Chair, to ensure that there's free access and people have got the ability to store bins in a safe and secure manner. Also, Councillor Kerr's point about incidental cycle parking, we'll knit that into a condition as well to make sure that there's that available in a fairly sizable curtilage to accommodate that. And then just to supplement what Stephen said about the public sector equality duty, that's covered off in part 7.4, where it says, and I'll quote, "In having regard for the intentions to consider impacts on people with protected characteristics and those who are potentially disadvantaged, the potential for the impacts of the development falling particularly heavily on the very young and elderly with disabilities has been raised in response to consultation, and given the adjacent land uses, this is an important consideration. It is considered that the suggested conditions would serve to minimise the impacts of the development on the surrounding area in general, and to the extent that the planning system is able to influence relations between people, that all reasonable steps have been taken to ensure that the PSED is fulfilled." So we have considered it as a material planning consideration. That said, Chair, there is a reduction. It's a fairly handsome property, I must say. If I'd got the money, I'd buy it myself, to be fair. It's a sizable house. It's got 12 bedrooms, and I think the limit that we've got to now, Chair, is reasonable subject to conditions, because clearly it could be occupied by a larger family with an extended family and other relations. So I think we've got a restriction in condition 6 to 16 occupants. I think we've about arrived at a position, Chair, where we are at a reasonable form of development with those conditions in place. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Stephen, do you want to come back on that PSED?
Yeah, please, Chair. I think it's important in terms of considering the impact for members to understand what that impact is on those persons with protected characteristics. If committee is satisfied with, well, there's 2 points, obviously. First of all, to understand what the impact is, and be satisfied that the conditions being proposed to overcome those impacts do actually address those impacts. If the committee isn't satisfied, then it's difficult to see how they are actually complying with their public sector equality duty. But that is a matter for committee to decide whether they are so satisfied or happy that the conditions are overcome. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Stephen. Councillor Morgan McGeehan was in first, and then it's Councillor Holmes, then Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Chair. A few points, and I'll try to keep it brief. Thank you to the speakers. I'm reading here that we've had a consideration of 0.3, an assumption of 0.3 cars per tenant. Now, I appreciate there has to be rules, there has to be limits, but I would question whether 0.3 in terms of car ownership is appropriate for this day and age for an average family living in a property in Derby. And therefore, inevitably, with my unsophisticated eyes, that will lead to problems, challenges and potential enforcement and conflict. Another matter to factor in there is that often, the way I see it, the limited spaces that do exist can be occupied by trailers, caravans, abandoned vehicles and the likes, anything kept off the road. So I did wonder whether it could be conditional that the parking spaces could be clearly marked and actively managed in this case. I did have a few concerns about the waste management, but thank you, Ian, you've commented on the condition and I accept that. Which brings me really down to concerns around the quality of life. I appreciate the rooms meet the HMO standards, but I believe 16 adults across 3 units with overlapping schedules and common areas does represent quite a high proportion of occupancy. I'm not entirely convinced it aligns with CP4's place-making ethos and supports well-designed places, but perhaps not a matter. I mean, I don't have to live there. Perhaps people would prefer that kind of environment. I hear that there's been engagement with the care home and with the nursing home. I wondered about a mandatory site management plan which would extend into waste, visitor parking, resident conduct and mandatory neighbourhood liaison as a minimum, but without those, it leaves me to summarise that, okay, there is a housing shortage and the mitigations proposed are reasonable, so it could be argued that this application is agreeable, but only with clear operational conditions, active monitoring and assurance that the scale won't be allowed to intensify, as is evident by the number of conditions that we're looking at placing on this application and the fact that it's already been deferred. If something doesn't feel right, it's generally not right. So, on the other hand, the proposal risks overdevelopment. The size of the property doesn't, I don't feel, justify 16 residents. We're pushing a significant number of parked cars and vehicles potentially into the neighbourhood, leading to enforcement conflict. I couldn't, in good conscience, personally agree that I'm satisfied by the comments in 7.4 that the neighbouring property, particularly with a view to residents with dementia, has been appropriately considered and satisfied. I couldn't support it without more information on that. We've heard from one expert today that said it would not be satisfied. Perhaps more information from our expert who considered it from our perspective before I could vote, otherwise I'm stuck.
Thank you. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, based on that, I think the impact on the care home is going to be in terms of noise, general disturbance for those occupants of the care home. And so I think in this particular case, we could look at the issue of the site boundary, because clearly this is a large property covering accommodation across 4 floors. And so it's going to have some form of use, whether it be it reverts back to its original, Victorian stature as a large family home. But it will have to have some use and it will have an impact. And so I'm mindful of that sort of fallback position. And so as part of this application, one of the first tests for conditions is necessity. Is a condition necessary? And I think in this particular case, we could justify that on that boundary that divides the application site from its neighbour, which does cover the neighbour covers most of its curtilage with building, can we have a form of boundary, some kind of acoustic fencing, some measure to run across the majority of that boundary to safeguard those residents who are in the care home, who I assume will be mainly in the care home as opposed to within its curtilage. And so I would have thought, Chair, that is the principal factor that we can address in order to minimise the impact of reusing this building on that neighbouring land use.
Thank you. Want to consider for later after you've finished? Yeah, we'll consider that. We'll just park that for 2 minutes in. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. Matt, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We've obviously there seems to be one of the main areas of concern, quite rightly, is the impact on those who are being cared for very close by. I'd just like to ask officers whether the PSED specifically covers, for example, a noise mitigation scheme, a formal noise mitigation scheme being submitted by the applicants to ensure that officers will be happy with the measures that have been put in place to properly mitigate that impact that would occur. And secondly, for example, we've just spoken about an acoustic barrier. Well, I would say that, again, would office, I don't think it does, but would the PSED cover, for example, a restriction of the rear garden, for example, I don't know, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., for example, that it shouldn't be used, not for the care home, for the applicant's property. They're two practical examples of I think robust mitigation in this case, in this specific case. And I'm not totally sure whether they would be covered as an example of two things in the PSED that's being cited as the main area that would be the mitigation for us to be satisfied that the best measures are being put in place to look after and care for those next door.
Ian?
We couldn't control the hours of use of the garden area. That would be unenforceable. We wouldn't have it wouldn't meet the test for the condition in that regard. And I think that's the only solution I can suggest. I think in terms of understanding that general disturbance is the principal factor of concern to the care home operators, then the solution from a planning perspective would be some kind of barrier as mitigation.
Yes, Matt.
But wouldn't it be prudent to ask the applicant to actually consider that noise impact in a proper manner and present a proposal, a plan?
If that's what you want, Council Holmes, and you want to defer it to seek further clarity on this point, then that's open to you as a committee.
Chair, just to clarify then, would it be proper to call it a noise mitigation scheme if that was something which I wanted to put forward as a proposal?
I'm happy with that, Matt. If you want to prepare, if you've got a second of it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's something which, because it seems to me as the onus is seemingly being put on officers to suggest, when actually I think the onus should be on the applicant to fully consider this and propose what they want to do about it to allay the fears in terms of impact on the care home next door. So I put forward that a noise mitigation scheme should be presented by the applicant.
Seconded by Councillor Patterson, I believe. Just a moment, Miles.
Sorry, Chair, sorry. And you want that before the application is determined, because noise mitigation is often something we leave to condition. It could be a preoccupation condition, and that is often the route we take. But if you want it before we determine it, because you want those assurances, then we'll follow your lead.
As long as Mr Teasdale is happy with that as a reasonable request, then that's what I'd put forward for us to then reconsider it once that has been submitted and considered.
Yeah, I think one of the key elements is identifying what the impacts are on the neighbouring residential home. And if that's part and parcel of it, the noise and impact, there may be other impacts as well. I mean, so it might be wider than that. But I think if members are not quite satisfied that there's the information to sort of assess the impact, it's very difficult to actually then say, well, we've complied with our public sector equality duty. I mean, that's the fundamental point, isn't it? I mean, so if you need information such as noise assessment or any other information, it's perfectly reasonable to but that noise assessment will have to sort of be looking at it specifically in relation to what the use is next door of and those people next door and how that impacts on them. And then from there, you then can impose the appropriate conditions to address that if they are necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Stephen. Before any of the other committee members, Carl?
Thank you, Chair. Just thought it'd be worth mentioning in terms of, because there was some discussion obviously going on about noise assessment, noise mitigation. Hopefully I don't muddy the waters too much. I've got a slight concern in terms of how you would conduct a noise assessment in this instance. I think the problem you've got here is the question, when you're deriving noise levels to conduct an assessment, you've got to obviously predict levels from a source. And the source in this case is residents living in albeit in 16 units, but fundamentally we're just talking about residential tenants. Occupants. There's not really much data out there for sort of measuring the expected noise levels from a resident. So I think that's going to be one of your first difficulties. And in terms of, mitigation, there are obviously things that you could do. I think, if you were to go down that route, rather than assessment, it probably would be better to just focus on, let's put some mitigation in if that's something you're minded to do. I think the noise barrier idea will be helpful to an extent, but obviously you're not protecting from upper floors potentially there unless you've got a very, very high barrier in place, which no doubt our planning officers would have something to say about a barrier of that height in terms of visual amenity and things. And the only other thing you could do then is to improve the actual insulation of the building, the windows. And obviously there are schemes that we put in. Usually, of course, when we look at these kind of applications, we're looking at it the other way around. We're looking about protecting the residents themselves from road noise, from other noise sources within the vicinity. And I must admit, it sort of seems like a sort of turning on its head slightly here, that we're thinking that the residents here are the source of the noise, and that's not normally something that we consider, and certainly from under noise standards and the remit that we usually have on noise. So I think it was probably just worth mentioning that as well.
Thanks, Carl. Who's next? Councillor Bonser, I think it was. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just in terms of the equality impact and around the noise levels, I mean, hopefully we won't be looking at noise levels per se, we'll be looking at them in the context of their impact on individuals with protected characteristics. So just to make that point, it's not just about noise, it's about the impact of that noise and disturbance. And Stephen mentioned as well that noise may not be the only area, and I'd also picked out the potential for the impact of cars coming and going and they're parking at the back, so with their lights, and that could be, you know, with 16 households effectively, you know, that could be happening pretty much constantly, day and night. So that could also have disturbance and impact on the residents next door. And the other aspect of the development that could have that impact on the residents next door would be that side window, you know, and whether that can, the number of units could be reduced and remove the need for that side window. I mean, I have lots of other points about the development as a whole, but if we're deferring the decision for further information, then I'll reserve that until we have a further discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Similarly to Councillor Bolton, I have experience caring for a family member with dementia. I spent a good few years caring for my stepfather, so I know firsthand the challenges that are involved in that. And as the conversation and debate has gone on this evening, I have more and more concerns regarding the public sector equality duty and the general planning and time that I think has been taken to look into that. So I was going to second Councillor Holmes's original proposal. I don't know if that's still up on the table, but yes, my general stance on this is I think more needs to be done, more information needs to be gathered, and the impact on the care home next door certainly needs to be looked into in more detail. So I would support a deferral if that's what we are doing, or however seems like we're going to go about that. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. I'd like to be reminded again about with the plan showing the locations of other HMOs in the area. These were mentioned by a number of residents in general terms, but not drawing out specific concerns, particularly with, as I thought, the relationship between one of those homes being directly opposite the care home. Now, it looks like a smaller building from the overhead pictures we've had, but it is of a similar distance to the majority of the rooms in the care home. So people see that on the plan at the top. So there should be some information about the impact of a slightly smaller home in multiple occupation and the impact on the care home and its residents. Now, it wasn't particularly highlighted, it wasn't specifically highlighted as an issue to us, and the parking on the street view appears to be only 2 vehicles, and we've not been told specifically about that having a problem also about parking. So I think we might, and I only say might, be looking for problems which may not exist. We don't know anything about the management of the other home, but it could be comparable. I'll just leave that with people.
Thank you. Matt, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just to wrap this up then, I've just written something here to see what officers think about this. So I'd be proposing that there's a creation of a noise mitigation scheme for submission to the local planning authority for us to consider as part of the application, and this would be to assess and address and document measures to minimise noise impacts, particularly on the adjacent Holly Tree Lodge Dementia Care Home, obviously given the sensitivity of dementia residents to noise, and these must be practical, evidence-based and tailored to the site's context. So I don't know if officers can offer, I'm assuming what I'm saying is a deferral based on that, and then we await that to be brought back to us. Would that be correct?
I think in terms of sort of the deferral, I think the deferral probably would be best left a bit more open for officers to explore sort of the impacts generally on the neighbouring property or on persons with protected characteristics, and then that will leave it open for them to decide what is necessary to feed into that, whether a noise assessment is necessary or not, given what Carl has said as regards to difficulties. So I think simply, if members wish to go forward with a deferral for that point, I just leave it open to suggest that somebody proposes a deferral and have it seconded and then take a vote on that.
Mr. T. Delson, do you need me to rephrase what I'm proposing then, based on that?
I think it's just a matter of deferring it for further investigations, Matt. I think that's basically what it is, Stephen, yeah?
That's right, Chair. I think I wouldn't be so specific as requiring a noise impact assessment at this point of time. I think I'd leave it for officers in consultation with Chair and with Carl to determine whether that is actually necessary for the purpose of identifying the potential impacts on the protected characteristics. I mean, it's worth mentioning that even if persons with protected characteristics are affected, it doesn't mean that sort of you can't grant permission. It's a question. The main point as a legal advisor is to ensure that you are aware of them, and that you otherwise, if you're not and you make a decision unaware of them, then your decision would be open to challenge whether you grant or refuse. I mean, so I think that's the main point, just to get the process correct. And I think the key element is perhaps you haven't got the confidence that you have that information to be able to assess, given what was said earlier by Mr. Viner, I think, in terms of the impact. Sorry, Mr. Mann. Sorry, Mr. Mann. Sorry, my apologies, Mr. Mann. Sorry, in terms of the impact on his residents.
Matt.
Thank you for that, as always. So I'll now formally then say that I propose that we defer to have officers in consultation with the chair to assess the impacts on the protected characteristics due to the committee not having the confidence in regards to the impacts.
We've got a secondary, Councillor Bond. All those in favour of the deferral?
Eight in favour, Chair.
8 in favour. Against? That's carried then, so it is, that application is deferred until further notice. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, speakers. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 7.3, St Clair School, Ruffina Road, Micklova. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. I've got one housekeeping item for members. We've had updated comments received from Sport England, Derbyshire Wildlife Trust and the Council's street lighting officer in relation to amendments which have been made to the proposed floodlighting details for the extended Mugger. No objections have been raised by these consultees, subject to conditions to control the design and illumination of the lighting columns. This will be covered by condition 12, which is already in the report. This application for public services infrastructure is for works to St Clair's Send School on Ruffina Road in Micklova. It's a revised submission for a permitted scheme of development for a new teaching block, extension to Mugger, and alterations to car parking and drop-off area, which was granted in November 2023. Works have commenced to implement this permission. The current proposal seeks alterations to the extended Mugger and associated installation of 6 floodlights, reconfiguration of the car park and drop-off area, comprising relocation of disabled parking, amended access and egress arrangement to the car park, with provision of a defined pedestrian route to the school entrance, additional car parking and cycle parking provision. The proposed teaching block is the same as approved under the previous application. 38 third-party objections have been received. The issues raised relate to noise disturbance from the Mugger, floodlighting impacts on residents and wildlife, traffic and parking issues at the school impacting on residents, and the use of the mugger in the evenings resulting in antisocial behaviour. The Highways Officer has no objections to the amended car parking and drop-off layout for the school. They consider that the proposal would improve the layout of the car parking and pedestrian route to and from the school. In relation to the flood lighting for the mugger, comments have been received from the Council's Street Lighting Officer, Derbyshire Wildlife Trust and Sport England, who all raised no objections in principle to the lighting scheme as amended, subject to light spill impacts being controlled through the planning condition. Environmental health officers raised no objections in terms of site contamination, air quality and noise impacts arising from the extended mugger. The mugger is proposed to be for community use and after school hours, and a restriction on hours of up to 9 p.m. in the evening will be secured by a condition which is in the report. Overall, the proposed works and extensions to the school are considered to be acceptable to provide enhanced education facilities and to allow for expansion of pupil places at the school and to improve access to the school for pupils and staff. Proposals would accord with the relevant local plan policies and overarching guidance in the NPPF and are recommended for approval subject to the recommended conditions. You have 2 speakers, I believe. Thank you, Chair.
3 by the looks of this. Mr Palmer, you sir, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to stress that this application is only in reference to the flood lighting for the current 35 by 55 metre pitch as shown on the screen here, as well as modification to the proposed school parking layout. The installation of the pitch itself was carried out in the summer of last year, with building works for the new school block currently active, all under a separate approved application. This new pitch is first and foremost for the school pupils and will be very well received since its installation. The flood lighting proposals therefore are aimed to facilitate greater community engagement in the evening. Netball, basketball, hockey, footballs and others can all be played here through a booking system. The lighting proposals include for 6 7.7 metre high posts in the corners of the pitch and centrally, with activity expected until 9 p.m. as per condition, as I understand it just now. Drawings by Halliday Lighting show that the average illuminance, that is the light reaching a surface with height equal to 0, will be an average of 291 lux, which is suitable for the sports expected to be played here. This, when quickly drops down to 1 lux at the boundary, as shown on screen, to the neighbouring properties, showing that the overspill is insignificant. At a height of 3 metres, the ambient lighting, that is the luminance caused by the floodlight, is expected to be around 0.1 to 1 lux as shown on the vertical spill drawings. This is comparable to that caused by the full moon at night. This is all achieved by highly directional lighting acting as a distant street lamp focused directly onto the pitch, with a source intensity of up to 702 candela when viewed from the nearby houses. Trees, fences and other features will help to block out this direct light source. For noise, the report on the existing mugger has shown that the background noise from the existing and nearby A38 and its slip road will exceed that expected by community users of the pitch. Finally, the car parking changes are a direct result of the engagement with the neighbouring care home. These proposals retain the original 35 spaces and improved one-way system whilst increasing the usability for pedestrians through the central walkway and better located for disabled spaces. Anyone who has used Roughina Load at peak times knows the difficulties faced, and this proposal aims to significantly improve traffic flow and prevent bottlenecks. Thank you for listening, and I trust you can appreciate the benefits this scheme will bring the local community and the school.
Thank you very much. Mr Viner, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. That's 140 decibels. We've been told that the pitch will be 55 decibels, about the noise of a humming fridge. Let's add 10% on that. And so if it's over 60 decibels, we would like the light pollution to be automatically switched off and need a manual reset. Floodlit pitches are a magnet for antisocial behaviour. Why is this one different? Any antisocial behaviour on the school pitches will be the school's responsibility. We would like to be able to fine the school for antisocial behaviour, noise and light levels that are not acceptable, and we'll distribute this money to local charities. Currently, the school doesn't seem to have any after-school activities, but this is the main reason for the flood pitch. If in the future it's proven that they're not using it for after-school activities, we would like the option to stop the public use of this pitch. There is no need for this floodlit pitch. We asked pitches within a 1 mile radius how much time they had free on their pitch this week, and there was 90 hours free. That's pitches in a 1 mile radius have got 90 hours of free available pitch space. Just a reminder, this is a special needs school, safeguarding. In the last 2 weeks, kids threw a brick through one of our fences. They've also been seen climbing on what looks like a shipping container with staff just ignoring them what they're doing. There's been drug dealing and use in the school car park. When the pitch is open until 10:30 or whatever time it's going to be at night, this antisocial behaviour will move into the school grounds. Have the school got safeguarding policies in place to handle this? This will mean sweeping the pitches every morning and making sure that anything drug dealers or drug users have dropped have all been picked up. Remember, this is special needs kids that are here, so even rubbish could be found, could add stress to them. School currently does not engage with the community. An example is, we've just been given a flower planter from the council, thank you very much for that, which also gets a Christmas tree once a year. We asked the school if they want to be involved, heard nothing. Our community, as you've been told, is quite difficult to get in, especially in school drop-off and pick-up point times. This is going to mean that the problem is going to carry on after drop-off and pick-up times when people come to use the pitch, and this is going to be all year round. Currently, the school land would be better off for housing. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Blackmore, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. As someone who's worked in education for over 15 years, I do really understand the importance of suitable facilities for schools. However, I believe this proposal is not in the best interest of both the local community, but also fails to address the actual needs of the school and surrounding area. As mentioned before, there's a real demand. Is there really a demand for these floodlights? Within a 1 mile radius of St Clair's School, there are already 4 sports pitches that offer collectively 90 hours of evening and weekend availability as it stands right now. The existing facilities are more than adequate to meet the needs of local clubs, teams and schools. Thus, this proposal is unnecessary and wasteful, especially given the current economic climate. Why approve a project that does not address any genuine need when viable alternatives are already available? St Clair's School is a special academy serving students with specialised needs, including those with EHCP plans. The plans highlight the increasing number of students with ASD and other specific requirements. Having worked in a school known for its inclusion awards, I'm aware of the challenges these students face. Consistency, routine, and a controlled learning environment are critical to their development. The introduction of public access to floodlight facilities along with an associated increase in the activity and potential disturbances could severely disrupt the students' learning experiences, as mentioned, particularly with those with ASD, who may be particularly sensitive to such changes. The surrounding area of St Clair's School have already experienced issues with antisocial behaviour. Floodlit sports facilities, particularly those open to the public, often attract disruptive activity, especially after dark. This could worsen the existing problems that we face. The residents living in the school value the peace and quiet of their evenings. The proposed floodlights will disrupt this tranquility, potentially disturbing their sleep and negatively affecting the well-being. Families with young children rely on a good night's sleep, and this proposal could seriously impact their quality of life. I have serious concerns about the sound report submitted with the application. The report suggests that the noise from the floodlights will be around 39 decibels, which is roughly equivalent to the noise of a refrigerator. However, the reality of using a multi-use games area for sports events will likely result in noise levels far exceeding this estimate. In conclusion, I would seriously urge the Council to reject this planning application. There is no genuine need for these floodlights, and the proposal raises serious safeguarding concerns with those students who require consistent, routine, and guarantees. Local residents will experience unnecessary disruption, and the sound report is fundamentally flawed. The funds allocated to this project could be better spent elsewhere, and this proposal does not represent the right solution for the school or the community. I ask that you carefully consider these points and make a decision that is in the interest of everyone involved. Thank you for the time to consider this.
Thank you very much, sir. Committee. Any comments? Oops, Councillor Kerr, sorry.
Thank you. I really liked the technical report on the lighting, but I'm also mindful that at the bottom of my garden there is a small amount of light from the lighting for an emergency exit from an unmanned building. And one notices that all the time. It's not directed, it's on the other side of a hedge, but this time of year you see it there and think, oh, it's got dark, hasn't it? I can see the lighting from the emergency lighting, light on the building. So this lighting will be visible. It'll be something that people notice. It'll be above the height of hedges, and it'll be visible from the houses that have previously had, I guess, a bit of light coming from cars passing down at the bottom of down on the A38, which is quite a long way down. And I think we have to balance that against the benefit of enabling the pitch to be used at the end of the school day. Because during the winter, it's an all-weather pitch. It could be used until 3:30, 4 o'clock, if that's the end of the school day. And I think it's wanting to be used later in the evening to be able to help pay for the cost of putting up the lighting. Now, how successful that will be, or whether that's required, as suggested by Sport England, as part of the condition of possible grants that might be used for it, is difficult to know. I'm not happy with the wording as it is at the moment, which sounds as though the lighting has to be left on until 9 o'clock, and I think it needs to be very clear that it must not be on after 9 o'clock, rather than that it's allowed up until 9 o'clock. So I'm a bit ambivalent about the actual value of that lighting, and I also don't think it's likely to be used every evening, whatever the deadline is. I think the deadline, if it is built, should be probably 8 o'clock and not 9 o'clock. However, the car parking, I definitely like the car parking arrangement that we have here as being better than what was being proposed before. It does seem to lack a dropped curb at the end of the little bit of zebra crossing from the central parking to the pavement, and I don't know why there isn't a drop crossing marked at the end of that path, and I would like us to allow that to happen. But this arrangement is definitely better. I think it's more usable. I think it's going to be more successful than the previous proposal that was put to us and which was approved a couple of years ago. So I would definitely like to support this aspect of the planning application, and I'd love to hear other people's views on the lighting.
Thanks, Councillor Kerr. Condition 15, restricted hours of use for mugger and floodlighting up to 9 p.m. every day.
And I don't like the phrase up to 9 p.m. because it sounds as though it's on until 9 p.m. I'd like it to say not after 9 p.m, but I'd actually like it to say not after 8 p.m, because I think 8 p.m. is late enough. And it would reduce antisocial behaviour if it's not allowed for as long.
Sarah?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the condition which Sport England recommend, because the improvements to the mugger and the floodlighting are the improvements to the sports facilities, which, as part of the improvements to the schools' sports facilities, Sport England require that they should be for community use, and therefore that we would then control them to a recommended time. And I'm just looking at the time. I think the 9 o'clock does come as a recommendation from them, which allows obviously then use by the wider community outside of the at school hours.
Thank you. Councillor Bonser, then Councillor Morgan McGee.
Yeah, can I just ask a question? I'm a little bit unclear as to whether if the mug is not in use, are the lights on?
I wouldn't have thought so. That's my personal opinion looking at muggers throughout the city, that, yeah, I think you book the court, and in the booking of the court, tell me if I'm wrong, but the lights would then come on. They'd be generated by the booking system as such.
I mean, if that can be clear, I mean, that sounds sensible, reasonable and environmentally friendly, really, doesn't it? We don't need the lights on if we turn the light off. Yeah, switch the light off.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if the 9 o'clock is simply a recommendation, can we consider 8 o'clock? I do feel that in a residential area, 8 o'clock does feel like a more suitable switch-off time.
Sarah?
We could go back to Sport England and ask them what they considered. The Sport England, because it's facilities, they recommend conditions that we attach as required by, because they are a statutory consultee for sports, pitches and fields. So I wouldn't like to say at this point that no, we definitely could reduce the hours. We think we would need to just go back to them and ask the question.
Okay.
Chair, just to clarify, is that because of the funding from Sports England?
Yeah.
So that might affect funding if...
Thanks, Sarah, for that. We'll come back to that one, but I think we can clarify, we'll be able to clarify when the floodlights go off and on, whether it's for use of the mugger or not. I can't see them being on if no one's playing on the court. Councillor Morgan McGee was first, and Councillor Bolton, and Councillor Holmes.
Thanks, Chair. That's taken some of the wind out of my sails, because I was going to talk about that 9 o'clock myself. Any house with a resident who's of the age where CBeebies is attractive knows that 7 p.m. is bedtime, not 9 p.m, and light does affect that. It's quite a significant thing. So if the question can be asked. I'm broadly supportive. I think we should be broadly supportive of sporting initiatives, but I think we've got to make sure that the school is being a good neighbour. Enforceable controls might be the answer. The hours of operation are effectively a winter-time extension. We've talked about this. I do think we should ask the question and consider reducing it unless it's going to materially impact their ability to attract funding. How would it be enforced is a question that I have, and I do suspect that the lights will be on timers or not on unless they need to be on, but if they are left on beyond 9 o'clock, I think that's material and worth considering. So some guidance on that at least, and potentially a condition if possible. Other considerations about the lighting, where there ought not to be lighting, as in artificial lighting, I do believe it attracts insects numerous, and that could be problematic if it's done regularly. I'm not sure what consideration has been put into that by looking at the report. The lighting, minimal upward lighting, I think was the phrase that was used. I'd be interested to know if assessments have been carried out to understand that whether or not that would affect bat corridors or nocturnal species corridors. No? Or whether it should be.
That was in the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. Yes, it was in there.
It was. I've just missed it. Thank you, Chair. And so finally then, I did wonder the encouragement for community use, exactly what does that mean, and how is that going to be managed? Is that just going to be a commercial enterprise advertised and purchased like a commodity, or is that going to be working with other schools, other competition and by nature, that kind of thing?
That I don't know the answer to be quite honest, but I would have thought it would be a commercial thing to do with it. It would be the school that would be getting the money in as such from communities, as in other muggers of this nature as well. Can't remember who was next, and I think it was Councillor Holmes, then Councillor Kerr, then Councillor Bolton. No, Councillor Bolton next.
Oh, right.
Okay, sorry, Chair. Yeah, very quickly then. I think just a quick Google of mothers, and 8 p.m. seems to be reasonable in most of them, especially at schools. Seems to crop up more often than 9 p.m. does. So I don't think there should be any issue with that. Obviously, I don't think it's going to necessarily mitigate all of the concerns of local residents, but I think it would be a step in the right direction, really. I think 9 p.m. is, given the proximity to local residents, then that's something that definitely should be looked into. And I don't think it's unreasonable either. So I just wanted to make that point, Chair.
Thanks, Matt. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, reading the page 26, full permission was granted back in November 23 for this two-storey teaching block. So what we're doing tonight is just a revised submission for extensions. I think that's an important point to make. We had a site meeting back in the autumn, I think, didn't we, Sarah? And obviously we did go on site and see the ramifications and the effects on the residents. From previous experience in dealing with a mugger in another ward, the lighting is controlled on a timer and it would automatically go off. However, if there was nothing going on the court, from previous experience, then lights aren't on. The lights should only be on when the mugger is in use. But I support what previous speakers have said. I think we should make it 8 p.m. and I'm sure that was the time of the cut-off point from a previous initiative I helped. So I think we should condition 8 p.m. We shouldn't wait for Sports England to tell us what we can do. And from reading the report and the discussions we had on site, I think this is a way of bringing money for the school because they're looking at outside clubs. That's what I picked up on the site visit. And I think, you know, we need more outdoor play areas. It's something we support as a council. So I think with the amendment of 8 p.m, when the court is in use, otherwise the lights shouldn't be on, I think we should agree as outlined by the officer's report.
Thanks, Sarah. Martin?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm reassured about the impact of light pollution from the report. Modern technology is pretty good now in terms of being able to direct light downwards and restrict its spread. So I would expect with modern lamps to be able to control the spread and the light pollution pretty well. I'm relatively relaxed about the time, whether it's 8 or 9 o'clock. But for me, I think the crucial thing is that the lights are off when it's not being used, and I think we should condition that. I propose that as a condition.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So, do it with those conditions. So it's at 8 p.m. and lighting goes off when it's not in use. Light shouldn't be on. Happy with that, Sarah? Is that okay? Is that okay?
Sorry, Chair. Could I just double check? We're moving on from asking the question of the 8 p.m. to putting it forward as a condition?
We're putting that condition in, yes.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. We'll move to the vote, so do it. We don't need a second, do we? No, we don't need a
well, yes, you do need a second.
We need a second for that, yes. Please. If we could, Councillor Amin, thank you very much. Right, all those in favour of the application with those conditions that we put forward tonight? And a drop curb as well. Do you want that lit? A lit drop curb or no? Yes, no. We're being silly now. Are we? All those in favour of that with the conditions that we put forward?
7 in favour, Chair.
7 in favour. Any against? That's carried then. So that's. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for the speakers. Thank you very much. Thank you, committee, for that. We'll move on to item 8, potential future site visits. Ian? No, it's not. Sarah. I do apologise.
Yes, it is me. We've got three applications which are all for Infinity Park Way, the IPD Business Park and Sinfin Lane. There are various works to build industrial units. And this one is for, I'm not sure which one this is for, to be honest, but it's works associated with the build. So I'm presuming you don't want to see it because it is all visible from the highway. Similarly for this one as well. Yes, like I said, there are three which are all for this site. This is probably one familiar with the former Showcase Cinema. This is an application for development of a 3-storey 66-bed care home on the actual cinema site. Again, you can see it from the road.
Chair, on that, can I just ask if that's a wider application, because I'm aware it's a bigger site and there has been some media and perhaps speculation about other developments on there, or is this all that we've got at the moment?
This application is purely for what's in the red line and just for the care home.
Okay, thanks, sir. Yeah, is that okay, Martin? That clarify it? Yes. Yep. Carry on, sir. Yeah, thanks.
This is a change of use of existing buildings on St James's Street to currently offices to form 15 apartments. And the final one, this is just a variation of condition for an approved Derby Homes bungalow development. It's just to amend the landscaping scheme, so it's very minor works. That's it.
Lovely. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you very much.
About the the site meeting we've agreed tonight, are we going to be doing that before the next meeting, the Chellaston one that we've agreed?
For the Chellaston one, we will get a date in the diaries, if that's okay. We can get that sent out. Yep. So yeah, all those interested. Yeah. Thanks very much. And that's it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks very much. Some good discussions there tonight. So thank you very much. Look forward to the next one. Thank you. Thank you, officers. Thank you.